I've got 201, so I guess, guys, we could probably just get going and dive into this. Warren, did you want to start us off?
I just wanted to say thank you, Matt, for putting a picture of Bob Lawrence up there as a young man. Bob, I don't know, the hairy chest is a little bit excessive, but you looked good back then. Actually, this is really Matt and Bob's call. The origination of it actually was in our offices here when the three of us were talking about content and the obvious cross-pollination between our on-air and digital products. And that led to I thought, a pretty good conversation, and then it led to we ought to open it up to the group. So here we are as a group. Appreciate everyone being on, and I'm sitting back and listening, and thank you, Matt and Bob.
Yeah. So let's dive in. This is these are all topics that we've discussed before, and Bob and I have discussed at length every time we're together. It's just sort of a review of the fundamentals is what we have for you guys today. And these are things that we just want to make sure are top of mind for everybody. When we talk about content, the one thing I want everybody to take away from this is that we don't want to talk about digital content and on-air content separately. It's all one conversation. And so we kind of want to talk about what does that mean to do things, all together as one presentation, and what does it really mean to manage a brand. Bob has talked a lot about branding and sort of his approach on that. So Bob, I thought maybe you could kind of review kind of in your mind what is a brand, the definition of a brand, and that kind of stuff to start us out.
Okay. Well, we've discussed this quite a bit. You all hear from me probably all too often about new ways of branding and ways of connecting. It really is just a unique way of connecting with the audience a little bit more than simply creating a product. We all have products. We've all done excellent jobs at creating great products. But the question is, do they really cut through as a brand? The difference between a brand and a product is really great. A brand is truly, and most of you have heard this already, it's just a promise that is based on a relationship wrapped inside an experience. And I know that sounds kind of weird and ethereal and all that kind of stuff, but there's really no other way to do it. We're making a promise. We're building relationships with listeners. We're courting them, and we're making marriage-like promises based on that relationship that we have with our listener, and then we try to create some addictive experience. And like yesterday, I sent out a little YouTube ad of the new iPhone commercial, simply because they're very, very good at it. You'll see me use iPhone as an example a lot, even though I've switched to Android. Heaven help me. When the Cookie Monster is on, I don't know how many of you have seen it or looked at what I sent yesterday. Cookie Monster is talking to Siri about baking cookies and wants the timer to go, and he gets all upset because only a minute's passed in 14 minutes, and he can't get his cookies fast enough. Never once in that commercial did they really sell the phone. They didn't even talk about it. All it said at the end was, hands-free Siri on the iPhone, but nothing else. And they're really connecting with the audience. Some of us going back to when we had kids or were kids, and Cookie Monster was a part of our lives. And that's really what we're talking about when it comes to creating some addictive experience that truly connects with listeners. And most of our branding is going to be done, all of our branding on the radio is going to be done in between the music. And I think what I got to learn from Matt over this last year, and he's taught me a great deal, is that we're not just a radio company. And I didn't really fully understand this until we were sitting in Warren's office one day, and he gives me some explanations of what the digital vision actually is. So we can go from there if you like, Matt.
Yeah, that's actually a really great lead-in, and I've used this example a number of times. When we talk about a brand manifesting itself really well in the media space, I love the example of ESPN. I've shared this before, but I'll share it every day I get a chance because I think it's a really good model to understand, not necessarily to replicate because it's not a good fit for us in our local markets necessarily, but this is an easy way to understand it. When you think about ESPN and you ask what is ESPN, what do they do? Well, they're a sports network, and their promise is you're going to get the best up-to-date coverage on all of the sports action, and that manifests itself through a number of products and in different ways. So you think about ESPN, you've got the TV network, you've got SportsCenter, you've got ESPN Radio with Mike and Dan Le Batard and whatever, and you've got the ESPN the magazine, you've got the apps, and you've got their network of websites. And so if I'm following the tournament, the basketball tournament, if I'm following the NFL or whatever, I'm going to be able to follow my favorite team, keep up to date through all of those products, but in very different ways. I'm going to watch SportsCenter to get the highlights from today, or maybe watch the games on some of their networks. I'm going to listen to the radio the next morning for some in-depth analysis of what just happened and people calling in, sharing their perspective on it all. I'm going to read the magazine to get the interview with the coach about his strategy and the way he's building his team. I'm going to use the app to get push notifications about what's happening in the game in real time, and I'm going to go to the website to kind of review some of that in real time as well. All is creating the same experience, the same relationship, that same promise, but manifesting itself in different ways through each of those products. But it's going to be the same relative experience, and that's sort of the idea that we're trying to convey here, is that we want to do the same thing. And so another example of how this is happening in other brands that we touch and interact with a lot is some of these major musicians.
Hang on, Matt. Can you turn your speakerphones off, guys? Guys, turn your speakerphones off, please. Someone's got a speakerphone on, and that's all we hear.
Somebody still on the speakerphone?
Can you? We got speakerphones on.
I'm going to keep going here. So if we think about Justin Timberlake, he's a massive brand in and to himself. He's done a really good job of being sort of this guy that covers a wide range of products and a wide range of media. So if you think about him, he puts out great music. You've probably got several of his albums. You can go to his shows. He puts on one of the best shows you've ever seen. He's been in movies and TV a lot lately. He's got a clothing brand, and he owns several other companies that he's heavily involved with. But all is this, throughout all of that, you get the same Justin Timberlake experience. You can be part of that whole essence that he's putting out there, and again, it terminates itself in different products in different ways, but yet it's that same brand across all of those platforms.
I think that's the key, because that's really the part that I didn't get until recently. When you talk about our own radio stations and our own websites and our own digital platforms that we use, from Facebook to everything else that we use. To me, when I first came on board, it was just a way to promote the radio station. I think a lot of us tend to think of it that way, that these are vehicles for us to promote the radio station. And while that's true to some degree, it has its own value by itself. It can make money, and you should know that digital does make a lot of money for the company. But it's a brand extension of its own. When they go to the website, they can go there for something else, just as they do when they go to our Facebook page or we tweet something out. There's a different experience that they get when we tweet something or they tweet something to us than they get when they're listening to the radio. And that's the whole point about, developing content that's unique for all the platforms we have within this company.
Absolutely. So if we look at like an individual radio station across our network, let's take, for example, Star 102.5 in Des Moines. You could pick any one of our stations and run the same test. But what products come out of the end of the Star 102.5 brand pipeline? Well, obviously, it's the on-air content. It's the radio waves. Is what you pick up with your radio in your car or in your home. But it's also our website. It's also our morning shows. Our personalities do represent our brand. They are ambassadors for our brand everywhere they go. And it's the events we put on in our communities. It's the way that we affect the people that consume our products every day. And when they show up to an event, hopefully we're impressing upon them the same promise of our brand that we do everywhere else. And so I would argue that all four of these little icons at the bottom represent Star 102.5 equally, but in different ways. They're different products, but it's not limited to just the radio waves. And so we want to ensure that every bit of content that we put together, every event, every web page, every promotion, every break has that cohesion with great content and great things that are meaningful to our audiences. And so we want to kind of get into the discussion of, how do we do this? How do we build a really great brand with a foundation of really good content? What are some of the processes that we want to make sure that we're doing every day to make sure that happens? And really, it starts with great show prep or great preparation. inspiration for any event or any product that we're putting together, and hopefully that we're being really diligent to educate ourselves on what's going on, and more importantly, what's important to our audience. Bob, did you want to talk a bit about show prep as well?
Yeah, I mean, when I was on the air, back in the day, there was no such thing as real show prep. There was no services. You couldn't buy it other than going to a newsstand and picking up all the magazines and newspapers you possibly could that related to you and the experience you were trying to build with your audience. We have Wise Brothers, but there's such, I caution you not to just look at Wise Brothers and think, well, there's the end all. Everything I ever needed to know about show prep is going to come from these three basic services that Wise Brothers offers us. There's so much more. The entire world, the internet, from TMZ to the Mail, the UK product,
the Daily Mail.
The Daily Mail, exactly. There's so many opportunities to look online, and that doesn't mean don't read the newspapers and don't be up on what's going on with pop culture and business culture. And I mean, we'll talk about specifically what's important, what people want to talk about. Remember, what we're trying to do is connect with people and figure out what's important to them. We do tend to talk about ourselves a lot in this industry, not just us, but I mean the industry as a whole tends to talk about the radio station, tends to talk about our own lives. And while that's interesting, what's most important to the listener is how are you going to change their life? What are you going to do and say that they feel is imperative for them to have this experience with you? You're going to tell them something that's extremely important about something that could be life-changing for them. So, I mean, show prep is something that you don't come in, do a 4-hour shift, and go home. We all know that. It's a continual process. I used to carry a digital recorder with me around all the time. Now with iPhones and all that, you don't really need that. But I was always writing things down or noting things. The world is your show prep, and you should be taking advantage of every single thing you see.
Absolutely. Another really important pillar of building a successful brand for us is regular air checks. And I know we sit down and we go over how our talent sound on the air and making sure that the tone of voice for the brand is consistent across all of our personalities on the air. But we should be doing that with our digital products and with our events as well. We should be going over our Facebook posts and looking to see, okay, this one reached a huge mass of people. Why was that? What did we tap into to make that one really successful? Or conversely, this one reached 83 people. That's nothing for us. Why did this one fail? This blog post that we made yesterday, it trafficked really well, or it didn't. Was the tone of voice consistent with what we're doing on the air and at our events and everywhere else? Are we sitting down with our content creators and regularly going over what are we saying? How are we saying it? Is our grammar good? Are we tapping into the right subject matter for our audience, not just for ourselves, but for our audience? And hopefully this is something that we're incorporating into our day-to-day, week-to-week routines with our content creators. We want to be doing that on a regular basis.
We would never knowingly create dead air. None of us would ever want to have a spot. In fact, we get alarms when there's dead air, or we go off the air, or the transmitter's down, or whatever. So that's a big alert. The same thing really applies to all the digital concepts and all the platforms that we use there. We shouldn't have dead air there too. That's just as important. Sometimes we've looked at websites over the last couple of weeks, and not to point fingers or blame anybody, because we know it's a difficult thing to do, which is why we're doing this. There are some things that haven't been updated, sometimes for months at a time, or never have been updated. And we just want to avoid that situation and give you ways and ideas to fill in those holes.
Yeah, or, if it's time to reshuffle the pieces that we have, let's put the ones that are being updated well and regularly, let's put those front and center, and maybe we diminish the ones that we can't tend to as often, or maybe we just kind of tuck those away for a while until we can come back to them. We certainly don't want to force feed anything that we're not able to do well. That's never a good strategy for us. So find things that are working well and that are updated regularly, and let's put that front and center.
And one of the other things my fault for stepping on you. One of the things we want to do is to look for people in our own facilities, in our own stations, that want to do this. Some of us have time, some of us don't. There are people who You know, I've been to Des Moines a couple of times, and every time there's an example of a market where every time you ask for something to happen, people tend to raise their hands. And I'm sure that goes on in a lot of these markets, in all of your stations. If you just asked, anybody want to take this on, there'd be volunteers. And that's a way to feed the industry, to feed the people who want to learn, who are hungry to figure out how this is done, and also a way to create opportunities for you and not bog you down.
I saw a great job post go out from Milwaukee this week. I'm not sure if it got sent to everybody or not, but they created a street team position for a social media ambassador or social media person for one of their brands. I thought it was really great. I mean, you can't tell me there wouldn't be a line of college kids that would want to come and help you fill your Instagram feed over the summer with everything that's going on. If anybody needs a copy of that, you can reach out to the folks in Milwaukee, or I've got it as well. I thought it was a really great idea, a really cool opportunity for somebody young trying to cut their teeth in the media industry.
Yep.
Okay, so another little soundbite to take with you is that I really believe that great content is not turnkey. We get asked a lot about, just plugging a feed in from here or there to kind of backfill our website. And while we can do that to some degree with our syndicated content, really great stuff that really tracks well with your audience is going to be local content coming from your jocks. And I do understand that takes a certain amount of elbow grease to do that well, and a certain amount of operational power to get that done. But this is really, I believe in this, that it's not something turnkey. It's something we've got to think about and put some thought and opinion into. A great break on the air, or a great blog post, or a great social media post, it's all the same. It takes a little bit of forethought and a little bit of planning and education to really speak intelligently on whatever the topic is at hand.
Anything you find nationally, you can create a spin to make it local. One of the things we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, I don't know how many of you saw that there was a dog who has braces. They put braces on this dog. I couldn't believe it, but it's true. The dog needed braces, so they invested the money and put braces on the dog. So how do you make that local? I don't know, you tie into local dog parks, places in your area where there are a lot of dogs. Heck, you can even mention, the humane societies and things like that to bring the local aspect of this to that particular story. That's just a small little story, but everything can be localized.
Absolutely, and that was actually my next point. Localize everything, and there's a number of ways we can do that, and sometimes it can just be your talent interjecting their perspective or a personal memory that goes along with whatever the story is. But there are ways to give your flavor, to put your station's flavor, your brand's flavor on every piece that we're doing, and we'll give you some specific examples on that coming up. So we talk about content. How do we identify what's good? How do we identify what would resonate with our audience? And each of you managing your brands in your local market, you're probably going to know this better than I would or Bob would. And but these are a couple of charts that I have found helpful to sort of kind of keep as a sort of a litmus test for everything. One of the diagrams I've shown before is the vent test. Does each piece of content we put out on our website or out on the air, does it pass this? Is it valuable? Is it engaging? Is it necessary and true? Hopefully we're hitting right in the middle of all of those things, because if a piece of content is 1, 2, or sometimes 3 of these, it may not be worth putting on the air. So hopefully everything we're talking about really resonates with our audience and passes all four of these subjects. And then, one thing I talked to Bob a lot about is sort of topics that resonate with different formats. And this was kind of taken from some studies he's done on female-leaning formats. And Bob, do you want to explain sort of kind of the children, the relationships, et cetera?
There are 5 basic areas that, particularly the female-based formats, the listeners want to talk about. They want to hear about. They're interested in. Children is usually number 1, and sometimes the order will change, but the elements are all the same. Their family, their children. That means everything to a mom. So, it's surprising how often we have, knowingly, that we have, a lot of single moms listening to some of these radio stations, but how many of us actually talk about the best daycare that could be found in a particular location? These are things that are valuable to a woman. She's spending half of her income on child care, and she doesn't know where the best of them are. We could do some of that. That's something that we could put on the website, something we could actually put on the air as well in a local bit or some sort. Relationships, husbands, boyfriends, spouses, wives, those are important. I don't know what that third one was. The careers. They're, where are they going in their career? Money, finance. And by the way, when you look at these, this should be no surprise because they're probably what you're interested in as well. And then the last one is health. All of these are the basic 5 things that all people, mostly women, but a lot of men too, are interested in most. There's the filter. So we want to localize the content and run it through these filters. Are we talking about kids? Are we talking about love, marriage, sex, those types of things? Careers, finance, what's my future? Our health. That's a big one with women. Women's health actually probably moves up to 2nd or 3rd position nowadays, and breast cancer awareness has made that even more important. So these things are more filters for you to run your content through.
Absolutely. So let's say we do identify a really great topic that we want to talk about on the air or online or whatever it is. The process that we would love to see happen is, let's say you identify a story that has to do with your finances. Randy Lane sent out an example a couple of weeks ago about a story about in a certain market, airfare was going up 25% across the board. That stat itself is useful, but doesn't really pull at the heartstrings. So maybe you talk about, hey, your trip to Disney World is going to cost you $1,000 more to fly there for a family of 4. Or maybe you're talking about, okay, fares did go up 25% across the board, but here are the 3 cheapest places you can fly to from Columbus, since I'm sitting here in Columbus. How do you make that hit your listeners where they sit? So after you identify the story, find a way to localize it. Find a way to tie it into your community, into what's going on in and around you, or inject your perspective, your tone of voice from your brand into that story. And then the last piece of the – go ahead.
I'm sorry. And sticking with the Randy Lane thing, if you subscribed or you saw this one that was sent out, be short on data, long on stories. So if you've got that story that you found about finance and you want to make it localized and map it to your particular area, then tell a story about it. Oh gosh, so my family and I were going to Disney World, and you won't believe how much that costs. You make a story out of it instead of just delivering the numbers. And then you've actually killed 2 birds with 1 stone.
Right. And then the last process is to say, okay, now we've got this story and we've put our spin on it. Where does this story reside? Where does it go? We talk about it on the air. Do we put it on our website? Is this worth posting on our Facebook page? Is this good enough to add into our newsletter as well? Is there a mobile element to this? Can we send out a text? Is there something we can put into one of our mobile apps if you're one of the stations with a mobile app? That's the process. Too many times when I'm in a market, I hear that the conversation kind of go backwards. I'll hear people say, okay, what are we talking about on the air today? Okay, great. Now what are we going to put on the website today? Okay, what are we going to do about Facebook this week or Instagram or whatever? And I kind of think that that's coming at it from the wrong direction. I would rather see us identify great content and figure out how that fits into all these pieces. And to be sure, not all content needs to live in all places. There certainly could be pieces that only reside online or only on the air. Of course, I will certainly acknowledge that. But a lot of times, the things that resonate most with our audiences will fit into more places than you think. And so, when we're doing really great show prep and we're really tuned into what our audiences want to hear, and we've got a well-defined tone of voice for our stations, all the gaps are going to fill in on their own because we've done our due diligence.
I'll put that into guys who are used to scheduling music. Rather than looking at your show prep and saying, okay, I have these platforms I need to fill. I have all these platforms. I'm going to take all these stories and just fill these platforms with these stories. It's kind of like when you do music, you wouldn't ever let your categories dictate your inventory. You don't look at your clocks and your categories and say, okay, I need this many A's, this many B's, and this many C's. No, you're going to let the inventory rule the clock. So it's kind of the same thing that we all do with music, except with content.
Absolutely. So we've got about 5 minutes left before I want to open this up for questions, but I wanted to give you a few examples of stories recently that I saw on some of our websites. This is certainly not a complete list, but just some things that I saw that I thought were executed fairly well. So if you want to talk about some national stories, there's nothing more national than the election cycle that we're in. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's got something to say, and you can do that ad nauseum, and the major networks are doing it, but how can we localize this? Well, the guys right down the hall from me at QFM 96 here in Columbus, Torgan Elliott. Bob sent this out yesterday. It was in the Randy Lane newsletter as well. They have a great bit where they have some impersonators come on and mimic Bernie and Hillary, and they they wrote some self-deprecating humor that made fun of our morning show, and it was hysterical. They tied in a bunch of local elements to the bit itself, and it played really well. It made a great podcast post on their morning show blog. They put it out on Facebook. It did really well. This was a really great example of taking something that everybody's talking about, localizing it, and then getting it out into several of our products the other morning. And so I loved this. It was a really, really good example. Another story that is dominating the headlines, obviously, is the March Madness, is the tournament. And actually, one of the most diligent stations in our network, as far as doing local content every day, are the guys out at KPUG in Bellingham. These guys do a really good job. They're a local sports station. They do a really good job of covering local sports, and they've got a couple of personalities there that write great blogs from their own perspective. They do some of their own reporting, but they also leverage the tools that we make available to them through Saga, through AP and Reuters and whatnot, to make sure that there is local content there every day about Major League sports in town, about college sports, about prep sports, anything you want to know about sports going on in their county and their surrounding area. They have become the go-to place, and they have resources available to them, but their staff isn't that big out there. They really do a good job at maximizing the resources that are available to them, and really proud of the coverage that these guys do out there. So kudos to our friends in Bellingham. Another post I saw that I thought was kind of fun, and this was more of a pop culture post. Netflix came back with Fuller House earlier this month, and producer Kurt out at Star 102.5 wrote a fun blog post about his first crush growing up was on DJ Tanner. It wasn't specifically a local post about something going on in Des Moines, but this was about him and something going on in his life, which to me that's localizing. It's coming from your personalities. People want to check in with you and your perspective and your opinions, and so I did like this post. I thought it was well written. I thought it was fun. It was funny. It was something everybody was talking about, but it definitely tied into who Kurt is, and it definitely resonated with the Star 102.5 brand. And then today, the big story today going on right now, unfolding, is the bombings going on in Belgium. We are in a lot of military towns. So there are a lot of people that are concerned with national security. I mean, I'm sure there's a way that we could tap into this, and I'm sure some of you already have. But finding these local national and international stories and just giving them your tone of voice, tied into your local community, it can go a really long way. And anecdotally, I will tell you, when I do check stats across the company, most of the time, the highest traffic pieces of content aren't the syndicated stories, but it's things that you guys have put together yourselves, in market. That's what resonates with your audience. They know what's coming from you and what's coming from a feed. So I'd encourage you to get out in front of it and really kind of put that stuff all the way through the process. So. I wanted to give you a few content resources to think about as you're going through and assembling pieces for your airwaves and for online. The left column, Wise Brother, AP, WENN, Reuters, those are all news services, content services that Saga subscribes to, that you have access to in one way or another. If you don't know how to access any of these, please email me. I will get you everything you need to know about each of them. These are great resources for both on-air and online. Please, please, please use and abuse these. We pay a lot of money for them, and we want you to be able to get as much out of them as you can. On the right side are just some aggregate websites. These are ones that I find really useful. There may be tons, dozens, hundreds, thousands of others that you find useful, and that's fine too. Reddit is great because it's a little bit of everything. Everything is voted on by users, so it's sort of a democratic approach to content that's good. You can subscribe to subreddits for your local community, your state. You can get an idea of what's going on in and around you. Flipboard is great for subscribing to certain subject matters that get delivered to you via email or their app. This.cm is a really interesting aggregate that's come out in the past few months. It's sort of like Facebook or Reddit, but each account only gets to post one item a day. So you see a lot of the major publications putting out their best piece of content every day. So it's sort of a way to kind of cut through the BS sometimes because you're limited as to how much content you can pump out every day. So I found that really interesting. And Vox is another one, long-form content on some of the biggest stories across the globe. So anyway, these work for me, may not work for you, but just wanted to give you some ideas. Just so you know, I will send out this presentation after we're all done, so you can have those links available to you. And Bob, is there anything else you wanted to add at the end of this before we take questions?
No, just wanted to open it up.
Yeah, any questions? Unmute your line and identify yourself and your market, and we'll see what we got.
Hey, this is Blake from Springfield, Illinois.
Hey, Blake.
Anybody else having issues with that thumbnail issue that I sent you about, Matt?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And since we're all here, I should tell you about that. Facebook has restructured the way that they ingest links. So when you post a link to your Facebook page, oftentimes you won't get the proper thumbnail or a thumbnail or an excerpt or the right headline. They keep it's a moving target over there as to how to deliver that data to them. So Facebook has a debugger link. If you go to this, I'll send out the link, but basically you go to a place on their developer site, you paste the URL that you're trying to put on Facebook, and you run it through their debugger. It's literally like you're clicking one button a couple of times, and it will flush out their cache, and it'll pull the right image for you. So there's sometimes is some manual work you have to do to get our links to post correctly. It's, from what we can tell from the documentation available to us, it's not an issue on our side, it's an issue on Facebook's side, which doesn't really help the situation. But yeah, I'll put that in my recap email as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Matt, could you address, I think a lot of people still might have fears about posting the wrong things and posting something they shouldn't post. So everyone's all together here. Can we go over what they can and cannot post?
Well, as far as like what we, from a subject matter perspective, that's really driven by the brand managers. But as far as like from a copyright standpoint, we can post anything that we write or create, and that's what I hope that we're doing is that we're writing and we're creating. We're content creators. If you take a picture, you're free to post that all day long. If you acquire materials from one of our licensed providers, one of the providers that we're licensed to use, whether it be AP or Reuters or WENN, you're free to use that as well. Images coming from those sources, we're free to use. Anything else that you post, you have to have express written consent to put on your website, and that gets really hairy. There are certain ways that we can embed photos and videos from other services like YouTube or Twitter or Getty. I've got some documentation on that I can send around as well. But really what it comes down to is when in doubt, ask. Shoot me a note. I'm happy to help you out. That's what I'm here to do. I want to try to keep us out of litigation. So as much as I can help you with that, I am more than happy to do so.
We allowed to post stuff from YouTube?
We are, absolutely, and it's the problem there is with YouTube is it's incumbent upon the person posting the content there to manage those sharing rights. So if they revoke that, it just won't play on your website, or the person who posted the content will get dinged should there be any sort of copyright infringement case against it.
This is Robin Simone from WJMR here
in
Milwaukee. Hey. Just a quick question. I kind of like to post things from a lot of sites that I'm kind of interested in, and I noticed that you were saying, that's how you kind of connect with your listening audience and so forth and so on. Like reality TV is kind of like big, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So a lot of times I'll copy and paste from I'll say the YBF.com, and they really give you a detail of, maybe last night's Love and Hip Hop or something like that. And, now on our website, we have it to where we can actually blog, and I actually put something up, my own opinion about the situation. Is that okay? And I mean,
your opinion is always okay. We can't copy and paste from another website word for word if we don't have license to use that. If you have an agreement with them, that might be different. But but it's always going to be better coming from you, from your personalities, from your station, sort of your opinion, your take on it. And then if you want to bounce people over to another link, that's okay too. Or if you want to put a video in, sort of recapping, that's okay. You can write about something and from an editorial perspective all day long.
Yeah, I want to add a caveat to that, Robin, and to everybody. We want to avoid divisiveness. We want to avoid politics. We don't want to put your opinion out there, and that is a detriment to you and to the radio station. So I would check with your general managers, locally to make sure what the local policies are when it comes to putting your opinion out there, particularly during a political cycle. That's something that can be a little scary. I sent something out from Randy to everybody this past week about how do music stations avoid divisiveness, and that is really by not coming down on one side or the other, but by presenting both sides. So being fair and equal is probably the best way to go, or just avoid it completely because you're a music station. So
I mean, I don't necessarily want to, put my opinion out there and everyone should listen to what I have to say, but it's because we are, an urban AC station, I definitely want to cater to my audience, just like you said, like moms and, sitters and things like that. A lot of people watch reality TV and a lot of people have comments, you know what I mean? And I want to be like a real person to say, yeah, I watched that and I think that's ridiculous. That's crazy. You know what I mean? Kind of stirring up a little bit of, conversation with my listening audience. And I'm still trying to figure out how I can, continue to kind of like, connect more. So that's kind of where I started, especially, on the website now that we can blog.
I think that's a safe bet to give an opinion about something as pretty much benign as reality television,
right?
As opposed to politics and things of that nature.
Right.
I mean, it's different for a music station than it might be for news talk stations. We all know when what someone's position is. If you're going to listen to Glenn Beck or Rush Limbaugh, you know what their positions already are.
Right.
But in your case, you don't want to alienate yourself from some of your listeners. But, as you're talking about just, reality television, I don't think that's going to be a problem. But again, I urge all of you to have a discussion with your local managers so they're on board with what the kind of content you want to post is really all about.
Right. Cool. Thank you.
Question, WXL, Asheville. When it comes to the YouTube, back to that, I know we can use YouTube. Can we take stills from YouTube and use those, or is that no?
The best way to go about that is to use the video embed tool that we built for you, because we pull automatically the thumbnail that YouTube makes available to post. So it gets really hairy and really, really like it's a pain in the ass. That's just all I can say. So yeah, use the video embed. We've built that the safest way we know how to kind of skirt around that. But I would try to stay away from generating your own screen caps from that.
Also, in the last Randy Lane thing that I saw sent out, they were talking about Facebook Live. Have we kind of heard anything new about Facebook Live?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that for everybody, actually. Facebook Live is sort of this weird animal. And for those who don't know, Facebook Live is Facebook's live video service that's a lot like Periscope or Meerkat. What happens is once your brand's Facebook page gets authenticated, you can be eligible to use Facebook Live, but they've been rolling it out in stages. I've seen at first it was just available to certain celebrities, then it was available to some TV stations in major markets, and now I'm seeing radio stations in some mid-sized markets and major markets using it. And what I have not seen any sort of formal plan. I do expect us to get access to that, but right now the only thing you can do is hit their form, just requesting access, but there's nothing that we can do to control when and how that's going to get deployed to us. As soon as I know otherwise, I'll let you guys know, because I know there's a lot of interest on this call about using that, and it will come in time. They just don't like to tip their hand on that kind of stuff.
Hey, Matt, it's Abe in Ithaca. Just wanted to point out that Facebook is actually rolling out Facebook Live for personal profiles. It's a little bit trickier for the business pages because, like you said, they're kind of, some of them have to be verified, some of them aren't. But the personal profiles, OS users for Apple can do it right now with their updates to their apps, and Android's supposed to be. It's clunkier, but it's rolling out there too.
Yeah, and it's just coming in stages, and keep your eye out for it. It will happen. Everybody will have it at some point. I just, they're not going to tell me when that's going to be available to us.
One more thing about that, with the verified thing, is there anything that we can do in-house to start the process to get verified?
You can just request the access. Yeah, right. Yeah. You can request access, but again, that doesn't in any way compel them to get to you any sooner. But it doesn't hurt.
Hey, Matt, it's Cuz in Milwaukee. I talked to Brian this week about verifying. He said just to hold off until the actual Facebook Live did roll out. Is that going to waste any time, or he said it'd have to go through corporate?
Yeah, well, once we know exactly how the process works, I mean, we're certainly going to roll it out as fast as we can, but I assume we're going to start getting it in pieces. You know, we'll probably, I don't know how they're doing it is really the answer, but believe me, we are as in tune with it as we can be, and as soon as we can get that in your hands, we want you to have that in your hands. So, you know, if anybody hears anything otherwise, certainly let me know, because, you know, we're interested in having this, but Facebook kind of does what Facebook does. So, all right, the best I can tell you.
Matt?
Yeah.
This is Aaron of Springfield with DVR. We used it just last week, so it's going.
For your stations page?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. For which one? For TAX or for DVR?
DVR. It was through Page Managers. We did it via our phone.
Uh-huh.
So.
That's great. Okay. Well, let me check into that, because that's really great. I didn't realize that you guys had access, so that's good news.
Did you use it through the Pages app, or was it through your regular Facebook app?
The Pages app on our phones.
So you could do it through the Pages app. That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah, all of our stations have it. Yeah.
Matt, Rob Selko, Clarksville Now.
Yeah.
Hey, some of our stations are using our content and just lifting it and repurposing it, and there's footer language at the bottom that talks about link to Clarksville Now, but in the body of the story, there's no attribution, and I'm kind of concerned that we're not. What's your recommendation for attribution if stations are just lifting stories to?
These are stations not in your cluster, right?
No, they're in the cluster, but Clarksville Now.
So
what's your attribution? What should the attribution be in-house for that? Because we are separate brands.
Well, I think that's something for you and your managers to decide. I mean, I don't know that I really have an opinion. It just depends on how you guys want to position that content. I think that's something for you and Katie to kind of resolve.
Okay.
Other questions?
Hey, Matt, it's Randy
in
Portland.
Hey, Randy.
Talk about, hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Talk about Instagram for a minute, because Instagram is so photo-driven, and in terms of brand extension and posting content there, do you see it as primarily for photos? And it seems not as friendly for radio as Twitter or Facebook.
Well, it's friendly. It's certainly friendly for like photo content, and so. You know, I always tell people, we have some stations using Instagram really, really well, by the way, in Des Moines. They've been doing a really great job with it, and I've seen some other markets as well. It kind of depends on what kind of content is your brand turning out. I mean, if you're out at a bunch of events and you're out at places that generate really great imagery and you've got somebody on staff that takes really great photos, you should definitely have an Instagram feed. Mm-hmm. But if that's sort of beyond what your brand is doing well on a content perspective, then it may not be for you. And so I rather have those conversations on a brand specific basis than kind of across the board, because I certainly would say we have hot AC stations where it's a great idea and we have hot AC stations where it's not. So it sort of depends on, you know, are we talking about CLZ or Coast, and what are you guys doing over the summer, and do you have somebody who can populate that well? I mean, those are all questions to be answered before I can answer that. But I will tell you, personally, I love Instagram. I think it's great. I think it lends itself really well to anybody who can create great images. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but it probably doesn't. But
no, that's good. Thanks.
Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of the bottom line. Like that's what I want to get at for this whole conversation is, you know, what content are we creating and where will that live well? That's what should drive what are we doing and what are we not doing.
Matt, this is Jonesboro, Bo in Jonesboro. I was going to let you know. Under the Pages app, it's just you just go to a regular, like you're going to post, and it's like near schedule, and one of them that says take this post live. That's how you get to the Facebook Live. In case
all right. Game on. Everybody's scrambling for their phones right now.
Can you repeat that?
Repeat that,
Bo. Well, you just go to the Pages app, just like you're going to post on your Facebook, hit publish, and there's the camera, the emoticon, and the last one on the right it's like a circle around a person. That's Facebook Live.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is Bob still on the line?
I am here.
Bob, this is Jim Frigo, Morning Show on the
Jim.
Fox.
How are you?
Who you going with, Batman or Superman?
Get to the real heart of it.
I'm a Batman guy.
Figures.
Hey,
Any other
Matt.
questions? Yeah.
Yeah, Doug here at KPUG.
Hey, Doug.
Hey, wondering about the fifth dynamic lead and whether or not there's any flexibility of us having control over that. Quite often we run into situations where it mimics what we have and looks poor when we have like a NCAA championship and we've got something that's going to be dynamic lead 1, but it's also dynamic lead 5 or something similar to that it doesn't look very good.
Let's have that conversation after this call, and it sort of depends on the market and the brand.
Okay.
Any other questions?
All
right. Everybody, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to send this deck around. Always reach out with questions and comments. We would love to hear it. Thanks, guys.